Hi and welcome back. Now that you have persevered through sanding your cutting board, you can now choose one of the faces to be the presentation face or the top face of your cutting board, the surface that will actually be used for cutting. And you can do this various ways. You may notice that after you sanded down, some of your glue seams may have had a few minor gaps on one face, and that's one of the ways that I choose on my cutting boards which face will be the top and which will be the bottom. I'll put any parts that have gaps or openings down on the bottom side. Another thing to consider is knots and defects. You'll notice here on this cutting board, the sample here, this walnut has a knot right here, and that knot actually is open, and I'm choosing not to fill that with epoxy. If I wanted that knot feature to be on the top of my cutting board, I would probably choose to fill it with epoxy, simply for the fact that any kind of food matter that gets into that hole can turn rancid, and bacteria can grow there. So we don't really want holes in the top surface of a cutting board. If the cutting board is just purely to sit on your counter and look nice, then knots may be something that you do want on the top surface, because they can be very beautiful whenever the oil is applied. But again, I'm choosing for this to be the bottom of my cutting board, and since it's the bottom, I'm not going to make the effort to fill this knot hole, because it will not be seen or affected by use, or rather it will not affect the use of the cutting board. So now that I've chosen the top surface, I'm going to turn the cutting board over on my table, because the next thing we need to do is mark the location for the feet and then install the feet on the bottom of the cutting board. To register the feet on my cutting board, and again, the bottom surface is facing up now. I'm working on the bottom of the cutting board. I'm choosing to put my feet in from the corner 1.5 inches this way and 1.5 inches this way. Now, this location does not have to be exact, and it's rather hard if you don't have a square, because whenever you make your measurement, you can see that I'm actually a little bit past 1.5 inches there. So without a square, it's very difficult to get this exactly correct. But it doesn't have to be exactly correct. If you're very close, no one will be able to tell the difference, not even yourself. We will be attaching the feet to the cutting board with stainless steel screws, and those were included in the Possum Box kit. What we do not want to do is just directly screw any screw fastener into wood without pre-drilling a hole. What that does is it actually weakens that connection between the screw and the hole, because you're pressing fibers out of the way to make room for the shank of the screw. And what we want is a hole that is the size of the shank of the screw, so that just the threads of the screw are cutting into and making a path in the wood that we're screwing into. Now, there's many ways you can do that. You can make that hole. One way is you can go and drill a hole, and if you have access to a drill, you would want to use a drill bit that is the size of the shank of the screw, and that may be just over 1/16 of an inch. You could probably get away with using 1/16 of an inch drill bit. You may not have access to a drill, and you may not want to go out and purchase a drill. Another thing that you can do, which is the method that I'm going to use today, is you can take a finish nail, and you can find these finish nails in many of the kits that you may even have around your home to hang pictures. And the shank of this finish nail is the same diameter, or very close to the same diameter, as the shank of the screw. And therefore, whenever I would insert the screw into the wood in a hole that was made by this nail, I would be using the thread of the screw would be the only thing cutting into the wood itself. And one thing we do want to make sure is we don't want to go too deep, otherwise we'll cut through the cutting board and we'll go into the surface, or through the presentation surface of our cutting board. So when I take that nail out, I'm left with a hole that should be the right size for the screw that holds the foot onto the cutting board. So now I'm going to take the foot and I'm going to attach it to the cutting board with the screw. Now, one word of caution, don't over tighten the screw. You want to go far enough down though that the rubber foot does not turn like that. I'm almost there. So now at this point my rubber foot will not spin. I have attached it adequately to the cutting board. I'm going to repeat the layout, marking, using the nail and the hammer process, and then attaching the foot to the cutting board with the screwdriver for the other 3 holes. And then I will have completed the foot installation on the cutting board.